one that we always learned how to do is like, okay, you fell down the cliff and you broke an arm, and your buddy up there, if they got a rope, he throws you the rope, and then you got to tie it around your waist so he can pull you up.
What knot are you going to tie?
What are you going to tie with one hand?
Welcome to the Wild Dispatch.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Wild Dispatch. I'm Robin. Almost forgot my own name there. I'm Robin, and I'm back with more skills and stories from the wild. Dennis Mckiver is also back, this time for part 2 of his Save Your Own Skin series. That's what I'm calling it. He's got many more nugs of wisdom wrapped up in some very wild stories. Some of them overground, some of them underground. That's a bit of a tease for you there. But I should actually caveat, I think. I'm just thinking out loud now. Dennis is a highly trained individual who has managed to get himself and many, many other people out of Dodge in some pretty crazy situations. But this podcast should not be considered a replacement for proper training. There are lots of courses and classes and official ways in which to become trained. So if you are interested in saving your own skin further, then definitely get out there and look up those things and sign up and do them, because it's probably something that you're going to be grateful for at some crucial moment in your life. Anyway, ranting over. I have another point that I want to say today, which is today is Veterans Day. And yesterday was Memorial Day over in the Commonwealth, as we would call it. And so I've been kind of saving this one a little bit for this day, this episode, because it felt appropriate for an episode on this day to feature a veteran who has seen action overseas. So thank you, Dennis, for serving this country. And thanks for sharing some of the stories and knowledge that you've picked up along the way. If anybody hasn't already heard Dennis share his experiences on Koh Tang Island, then be sure to go back and give episode 17 a listen after you're done with this one. It is quite mind-boggling, the intensity of what happened over there. So definitely give that one a listen. There's one more bit of housekeeping that I just want to say, which is at the end of the episode, Dennis references a few knots specifically that will be handy tools for saving your own skin. So I'm going to add a few links to videos down in the show notes so that you have a visual of what he's talking about. Right. Thanks everyone for listening. I'm excited for you to hear this one. Here's Dennis.
Same thing could happen. In fact, there's another environment we could talk about too, is caves.
Okay. Yeah, go for it.
Well, the same thing. I mean, you can end up in a cave and not know where you are.
Yeah.
And not know how deep you are. It's easy to climb down. It's a lot harder to climb back up. And it's dark, and your batteries go dead on your headlamp.
Yeah.
Now what are you going to do? You know, there's no starlight or moonlight coming up. You know, it's like pitch black.
Yeah.
You're by Braille.
So what? I mean, is there, or are you just like I'm trying to imagine, like, so what would one do if they happen to be lost in a cave and their battery goes flat in their head torch?
You have to figure out. That's why you want to carry some, combustible materials. You might have to. Yeah. You want to carry extra batteries and extra headlamps.
Yes, extra headlamp.
Multiple headlamps, and even when I'm out hunting, I've got probably at least 3-4 headlamps with me.
Really?
Yeah.
I always have 2, but that's next level.
Well, I got the 2 full headlamps, and I probably have an individual flashlight. And I got the little headlamp that's in the bill of my cap. And
That's true. That's a good point.
So, yeah. There was a place where I was out hunting one time, and we were camped out, and my buddy and I we had our pup tents, and he was in a tent here, and I was in a tent here. We were camped on the edge of a cliff.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm out and hunting until dark, and I'm trying to get back in. Well, it was like a no-moon night.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to find my way with my GPS back to my tent. But this is before GPSs used to be only accurate up to about a couple hundred yards.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a pretty big
And then
area.
more recently,
It's like 10.
yeah. Now recently they took out. They used to. It was a military thing.
Okay.
Since the government owned the GPSs, they put this error in the GPSs so that, like if you were using it to come in the fog in the channel in the harbor, you better not rely on it because it might put you up on the rocks.
Yes. Yeah.
But now, and they used to have what was called the WASP GPS for marine navigation. You could buy this more expensive GPS that had a device in there to take the government error out.
Yeah.
Okay. But everybody's general GPS you handheld you were out in the woods with, you might be 100 yards off. So we're coming back trying to find my tent with no light, and I didn't have a headlamp with me at the time, and it was like, and I know I'm next to this cliff. I don't want to step and fall off the cliff.
No. Yeah, I can imagine that's a bit of a...
And luckily, I got back before he did, and he was kind of more lost, and I turned the light on for him. He was able to find his way back. But
Okay.
but that can happen. But anyway, I can tell you a story, a cave story.
Okay, yeah, go on then.
I got a degree in wildlife management.
Yeah.
Right. So when I was going to college, one of my wildlife classes, we did a field trip up to Lababeds National Monument, which is up by Tule Lake.
Okay.
Up Northern California.
Northern California.
And it's kind of cool because there's lots of caves there.
Yeah.
So we were out doing our wildlife stuff during the day, and then at night.
Should we make a little?
Yeah.
I think that way. Let's try the old three.
Messed it up by touching.
How's that? You're getting excited, Dennis.
Yeah. Talking with my hands and I hit it.
I think that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, let's try that.
Okay.
I think it sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, the instructor told us, says, "Oh, if you guys want to, when we get back in the evening, you guys can go see the caves." And so we're out doing our wildlife stuff, and it's starting to get dark. And somebody in the bus goes, "Are we going to get back in time to go into the cave before it gets dark?" And he says, "Why? It's not going to get any lighter in the cave." Anyway, so we went out, and the caves are lava tubes.
Yes.
Okay, so it's kind of cool because there was this lava tube we could go in, and you could crawl through the lava tube, or someone can stand up as big, and then you might go 200 yards and then pop up, see the stars, and see where you are, and then go down and take another lava tube over here, and then pop up and go, so you didn't get lost doing that because there was all these entrances above that you could come up to.
Yeah.
And there was some you'd climb into, and they'd be covered all in gold, like it would be like phosphorescent algae growing here that was gold colored.
Wow.
You come in there, shine a light on, it's like, we just we're rich, It's like it was just algae.
Yeah.
But there was another cave there, and it was called Post Office Cave.
Okay.
And it was lava tubes, but it was like a whole bunch of lava tubes stacked on top of each other, going thousands of feet down underground.
Wow.
And you weren't allowed to go in those without a wilderness permit. You had to be an experienced spelunker to go in there.
Yeah.
Well, it turned out the entrance to this thing, it collapsed. And it was a big entrance the size of a bus.
Yeah.
That you could walk into this cave and then explore from there. Well, supposedly the entrance had collapsed, so there was no way into the cave. So they said, we're not getting permits to go in there because you can't go in there.
Yeah.
Well, what they didn't tell us is, and I happened to find another cave. And I didn't know it was this post office cave.
Yeah.
That we weren't supposed to go into. I just thought it was the caves we have been going into. And it was just a small opening, and I had myself and a girl and another guy with me, and they were dumb enough to follow me. And we crawled down into this hole.
Yeah.
In there. And it turned out that there was somebody had been in there before, and there was painted fluorescent lines, with arrows.
Ah.
So we could follow, so we followed the arrows.
Yeah.
Which were going down. And we were in this cave like all night long going down. And you had to watch out because there are these places that you get up to and, there's like 100-foot drop. Because there were caves on top of each other, but there was places that had collapsed
just
and fell through and is down. So, but it turned out we were in this post office cave because it kept going down and down and down. And it was kind of dumb because at least we had enough headlamps, but it was like, I don't know how the headlamps lasted till daylight, but we went down probably several thousand feet.
Wow.
And then following these arrows.
Yeah.
And then luckily we stayed with the arrows so we could find our way back, and we came back out. Well, what we didn't know it is we'd gone down in the cave just about at dusk. When we came back out, it was getting light. And I think I weighed 150 pounds or 55 pounds at the time.
Yeah.
And the girl was smaller than me, but the other guy was bigger. And he had a hard time getting down through the cave opening to begin with.
Yeah.
And on the way back out, you're climbing up instead of sliding down. You got your gravity helping you going down. Well, he's trying to come back out.
Yeah, it's harder work.
Well, he got stuck coming up through the little opening. And he was stuck halfway up. And it was getting light. What we didn't know was when the big entrance collapsed, it blocked off the entrance for all the bats that lived in the cave. And we didn't see any bats in there because it was nighttime. They were all out.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, now the sun's coming up, and the bats are trying to get back in the cave. And they're flying. We're up there on the surface and trying to coax him up and talk him in. And he's like stuck, and the bats are flying down. We're trying to shoo away the bats, but they're flying between our legs and going down the hole into his face, and he's like freaking out. And luckily, he freaked out enough that he wiggled around enough and got himself loose and be able to make it out. But I don't think he ever went in another cave after that.
That's like a nightmarish
but
situation.
Being prepared would have enough headlamps and stuff, and maybe also food and water because you could get lost and stuck down there.
You'd be down there for a long time.
Maybe a rope, somebody could fall and you might have to rope them out of someplace. Or,
Yeah. It's all good points.
Yeah. So, I mean, you probably shouldn't be going to climb down in caves like that unless you're experienced rock climber, mountain climber also. Cause you're rock climbing, but you're rock climbing down instead of up.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so...
All right.
Thank you for the that was a good story. I like that, the cave intermission. Let's talk about oceans for a second.
Okay.
I think I'm looking at time. We are talking like there's so much good information, Dennis. Like we can just keep going. Like, if you're okay for time,
I'm okay.
Okay, oceans. So common watch outs for like if you're going out on the ocean. I mean, weather. I'm guessing is a really big thing.
Weather and waves.
Understanding what that means.
Yeah. Hypothermia again.
Okay, so that's good. Okay, so then I guess
fog.
Fog is a whole thing.
Yeah.
And I think a good point that Isla, someone who's a guest on the podcast, actually I think it just might be live now actually, talking about like when you're in a thick fog situation, if you have a good understanding about what the waves are doing, then that's a way to gauge where you're facing or where you're going, because you can see, it's hard to see, but you can see what way the waves are traveling. And if you know where they're going, then that's a way of navigating.
Like when you leave the harbor,
yeah,
my waves are coming in from the northwest.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Means I go out someplace, I might, if I know that I went out and I went north,
yep,
then I want to go northwest back to shore. I also know the depth. Like when I was down in Half Moon Bay working as a warden down there, this was before we had GPS.
Yeah.
And guys would go out to the Farallon Islands, which is 30 miles off the coast, out of Half Moon Bay.
Yeah.
And they would go out there and fish, and then they'd come back. And then they'd take a compass heading to find the islands.
Okay.
And then they'd take a reverse compass heading to come back. Well, 9 times out of 10, they'd end up 7 or 8 miles south of the harbor because they didn't take into account the current.
It's pushing them.
And the wind drift was pushing them south. And they'd be down there calling the Coast Guard because they're out of gas. I can see the shore, but I'm out of gas.
Yes.
So you have to know, you should know some basic navigation stuff that you got to allow for what they call set and drift.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that makes complete sense.
So, and when you're in the fog, sometimes you don't know which direction you're going. You could have one day out here, I had a perfectly flat, calm day, and I'm trying to head up to Shelter Cove along the coast.
Yeah.
And I leave, and, the shore's over here, and then we hit a big fog bank. We're in the middle of the fog, and I can't see anything, and I'm not paying attention. I'm talking to the other person with me. We're chit-chatting about something, and all of a sudden I look out, and the shore's on the wrong side of the boat. I made a 180-degree turn while we were talking and was heading south instead of north.
Wow.
And all of a sudden the shore's over here instead of over here.
Yeah, that's not right. That must have been a moment where you're like, there's something wrong here.
But when I was at Half Moon Bay, I knew that if I lost my navigation, I could go south. I could follow the waves in until I got to 40 feet deep, because it was a sandy, south of the harbor for several miles was just even depth sandy shoal.
Yes.
So I hit if I had a depth sounder, I hit 40 feet, and then I can go on the compass, go due north on the 40-foot line. I'd hit right into the harbor.
Okay. So you managed to figure it out that way.
I managed to figure it out that way. So those are the kind of things to know.
Yeah.
Out here, and I had a problem with my boat electronics, and I lost all the electronics and had nothing working. And I was familiar enough with the shore because I had memorized all the different rocks along the shore.
Yes.
That I came into the shore until it was foggy, but I came in, 100 yards off the shore where I could see these rocks. And it says, okay, I know where I am now. And then they took a compass heading south and got back to the harbor that way.
They call that, I think in England, they call that sod's law. It's the time when everything fails is when it's like thick fog.
Yeah. What do they call it here? It's Murphy's Law.
Oh, there you go. Murphy's Law. It's probably the more appropriate. It's probably the more appropriate term.
Yeah.
Apologies if I offended anyone with that.
Of course, nowadays we have our phones, so if everything electronics goes out, you
still have a compass.
I put that compass, but there's a navigational app, the same one I have on the boat, I can put on the phone.
Yes.
So you can
just go, right, I want to go here.
See,
okay, that's where I need to go.
Yeah. As long as you have cell service.
That's a good point. It's a good point. But I think even the GPS works with phones.
Yeah.
Without
cell service. Yeah.
So I've definitely had a few moments where that's helped me out for sure. So, okay, we've covered quite a lot of things with oceans already in some of our other conversations, but one thing that's probably good to talk about, which is like a major danger in being in the ocean, is drowning.
Yeah.
So I guess there's two things: rescuing someone from drowning, and then there's also this thing that I was just doing some research about, secondary drowning, right? Which is, but let's talk about drowning first of all, about I guess it's pretty obvious. But what's the things that you should know about being in the water, trying to rescue yourself in some capacity? What are the things that you should do and shouldn't do if you find yourself, like if, you're out of the boat and you're in the ocean?
Well, one thing, realize that out here you're not going to last more than about 15 minutes before you're going to become immobile just because of the water temperature.
Because it's so cold.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're going to be hypothermic pretty fast.
Okay.
So that's one thing to know. But even if you're out there swimming in a wetsuit, say you're skin diving, spearfishing, or we used to have abalone divers out here get in trouble all the time.
Yeah.
Is you're out here in waves, you're diving amongst the rocks.
Yeah.
And a wave picks you up and slams you into the rocks. How many people dive with a helmet?
Right.
None.
So you're saying wear a helmet if you're going to be out there.
It could be, might want to wear a helmet if you're diving in amongst the rocks and stuff like that. But that's where we had people that get slammed in the rocks and get knocked out and then they're dead.
Yeah.
The other people is out diving when they're just out of shape and they're out there and they had a heart attack while they were diving. And we had other people die out here that they were allergic to something in the ocean and they had a asthma attack while there. So if you have asthma, you might think about you want your inhaler with you someplace.
in a little plastic
Ziploc bag, something where you can pull it out and use it. We've had people have asthma attacks and not make it back in.
Wow.
But mainly it's be like just head injury or just panicking.
Yeah.
I've seen guys out there that they're out there floating on their tubes and they're trying to get back in, but they're trying to swim against a rip current. So learn how to see where rip currents are.
And go sideways.
Yeah, and go sideways and not try to come straight back in the way you went out. Oh, it was easy swimming out because the current was pushing you out. And now you're trying to swim back in the same way. It's like not going to work. Swim out and go around over here and come in this way.
Okay, so that's a good point.
I mean, talk to any surfer. That's a surfer's ski lift.
Yes.
They get in the rip currents and they go out there and takes them out, and then they go sideways and they catch the wave and they surf in and they get in the rip current and go back out. So they like those rip currents, but they don't have to paddle so much.
As long as you're using them the right way.
Yeah, and you can see where the rip currents are when you're up on the bluff and whatever with how the foam is moving.
You can see it.
Yeah,
the swells.
You can see a whole channel of foam going out. It's like,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know.
That's also the good place to fish.
It is, because that's where there's like a constant flow.
The surf perch are hanging out there waiting for those sand crabs that have come in and spawned, and they're going back out.
So maybe you told me about this another time, but an abalone diver was the victim of a shark attack here quite a while ago, I think.
Quite a while ago
10
now.
Years ago, maybe?
Yeah, more than that.
But I think you were telling me that it was one of those currents that was moving, that a shark was just sat and
what it was is just north of here, what the place they call Kipasilla, and I was diving the exact same place the day before.
Wow.
And I find partly guilty because he asked me where a good place to go diving was, and I sent him there.
Wow.
But the problem is it's we have a lot of rock formations along the coast here. And it was a place where the rock formations came out, and there was a channel, 15-foot deep channel going through these rock formations up onto a sandy beach.
Yes. That
was surrounded by really high cliffs. Ideal place for a seal haul out, where they're protected from predators and stuff. But
yeah.
So the seals would go in there, and it was a big enough beach where that's where they had their pups. And so when the pups are weaned and ready to go in the ocean, they have only way out in the ocean is through this, 20-foot wide, 15-foot deep channel.
Yes.
And that would also be a great white shark feeding station.
They can just sit there and wait.
Just sit there, wait for the seals coming out.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know why, but he decided to swim up this channel and then swim back. And as soon as he got back at the mouth of this channel is when the shark hit him.
Okay. And the other way to do it would have been to go through in, but then never out that way.
Never out that way, or just not go in there. I would not have gone in there just because I knew it was full of seals.
Yes.
I wouldn't have gone in that channel.
Yeah.
I was diving out in the front.
Not near that channel, like that.
And not going to the mouth
point
of that channel at that choke point. And then the other thing too is this is back to the mountain lion thing, is don't look like they're prey.
Yeah.
Okay. He was into this competition spearfishing, and all these competition spearfishermen wear these camouflage wetsuit.
Yes.
Well, he was wearing an old camo wetsuit that is faded out and gray in color. He looked just like a harbor seal. So, and he wasn't a big guy.
Yeah.
So he looked like a baby harbor seal.
Wow.
So he basically dressed up as their bait and swam where they feed.
Hung out where they are.
Hung out where they are and
just didn't...
And he used to jokingly say that I'll probably get killed by a shark one day because he used to dive out in blue water and deep water shooting tuna.
Yeah.
Where you might get hit by a shark out there, but he was in close to shore when he got hit in 15 feet of water.
Which is, I guess, yeah.
Well,
it's
where great whites feed,
Yeah, it's the way. Yeah. So I guess the point is understanding your environment is an important
Understand
thing.
the environment, I tell people, I says, once you step your foot in the ocean, you're no longer on the top of the food chain.
Yeah.
Kind of the same thing when you're out hunting in a grizzly bear habitat, you're no longer on the top of the food chain.
Yeah, you're at other creatures' mercy to some extent.
Yeah.
As long as you can make the right choices.
Yeah.
Okay, so the only thing I would say, we talked about drowning, and you were talking about the actual reality is often panicking or people hitting their heads and those kinds of things cause the drowning. But say someone is rescued from drowning, this secondary drowning thing, which is like just because you've been rescued and you've taken some water in,
you suck in some.
You can still be in
die.
trouble. So what does that involve? Like what are things that people should be aware of? And what is it?
You've sucked in salt water in your lungs, and actually, saltwater secondary drowning is not as common as fresh water because in fresh water you've sucked in a lot of bad bacteria in your lungs. So basically, you can get pneumonia right after that and get some bacterial infections that can kill you.
Okay.
Especially if you hear about these brain amoebas.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you've heard about that before?
No, that's something else to be scared of.
Well, that's if you're like in fresh water, and people have even got this from like water slide parks.
Okay.
There's an amoeba that lives in warm, fresh water, and if the water slide park is not chlorinated enough, it could grow in there, but it's on the bottom and whatnot. But mostly it's in ponds and lakes where there's mud, and they can enter through your nose. So it's the thing, well, maybe you want to wear nose plugs when you're in fresh water. Where most of the instances that happened where people were like skiing or wakeboarding and they fell, and the water's not very deep, and their head went down into the mud, or the mud's getting churned up by the boat.
Yes.
And then they snorted these amoebas up their nose. Well, then they go through your nose and end up in your brain, and the death rate from these things is like 99%.
Wow.
There's like only been one person they know of that survived, kind of thing. It's
Crikey.
not real common, but it can happen. And that's more like in freshwater. But the same thing could just happen. You just get the bacteria in your lungs, you get pneumonia.
Okay.
Same thing could happen in the ocean, but there's less things in the ocean water. The ocean water is actually more close to our body fluids, saltiness.
Like levels.
Levels, yeah.
Okay.
It's like taking normal saline, IV.
Yeah.
But there are critters in there. There's diatoms and there's other,
okay. Things to just be aware of.
Just be aware of, yeah.
Okay.
But probably more so in drowning, there's what you call, you hear about people, I can hold my breath for 5 minutes, or I can hold my breath for 3 minutes. It's like, most of the drowning is called shallow water blackout.
I've heard of this, yes.
Okay, where you're holding your breath, and all of a sudden it's kind of like the hypothermia where you're chilled, and then you feel warm.
Yeah.
You got the shivers, you feel warm. Well, when you're diving, you got this urge to breathe.
Okay.
But you can fight through that urge, and that urge goes away. And then you can dive for another minute or more.
Yeah.
And I was just reading an article where one of the actresses from filming that Avatar movie, the latest one where they did a lot of the shots underwater.
Yes.
Said she held her breath for 7 minutes.
Isn't that? I think it might be Kate Winslet.
Yeah, Kate Winslet holds the record for holding your breath the longest.
Yeah.
While filming underwater.
Yeah.
And I could have questioned 7 minutes. I don't know if somebody was timing that right, because that's a long time. I mean, 2 minutes is a long time for most people.
Yeah.
But you could pass out underwater, and I've had my best buddy in the military. He passed out underwater like that. We had to pull him out and
shallow water,
give him mouth to mouth. Well, we used to practice swimming the length of a swimming pool underwater.
Yes.
And of course, we would do things like, you did it once, I can do it twice, up and back. And I got to where I could do 3 times.
Wow.
Twice on a 50-meter pool. But he did it. It was kind of like he'd been doing this with no problem up and back. And then one time he goes down and it was like he wasn't even the full length of one distance and he passed out underwater.
Yeah.
So generally what we found is what's happening is the people that are most susceptible to shallow water blackout is what you should do is what I told you about pressure breathing.
Yeah.
Okay. You blow out all that extra air in your lungs.
Yeah.
And then take a big deep breath in and dive.
Yeah.
What some guys are doing is they're like doing that multiple times and they're stacking.
Yes.
But what they do is they end up stacking CO2.
Yes.
And then they push past that urge to breathe, and then they black out from the too much CO2 that they've stacked.
Yes, and I think that's partly why there's this whole new phase of meditations and all this kind of stuff with like I think it's called Wim Hof, is where someone you do a lot of deep breathing and then hold your breath, and it has that sensation. But people have started trying to use that technique in water, in swimming pools, and then people are dying.
People are dying. That's from that shallow water blackout.
Yeah, they're just.
And part of it too, they're not really deep breathing like I said, where they're blowing out.
Yeah,
they're just basically hyperventilating.
Yes, exactly.
And so they're not doing it correctly, and then they have the shallow water blackout.
Okay, so that's the thing. Don't do that.
Yeah.
It's lucky because I did
and
go
have somebody
through
diving with you.
Have a dive buddy.
Yeah,
that's another good point.
I've had times where I've had dive buddies that I've, told them you're not my dive buddies anymore because they're not really dive buddies. You're dive buddies, but then they go off and do their own thing.
And they're not keeping an eye out.
They're not keeping an eye on you, and you're not keeping an eye on them. Ideally, you should be in one guy's resting while the other guy's diving, and if he doesn't come up in his normal time, you better dive down and look.
Right.
Or you better be diving together.
Yes.
And staying together, not.
Or someone's
like
up
this.
and they're supposed to be up, and then they see a sweet fish, and then they just go, "Oh, I'm just going to go after that one and leave Dennis to take care of himself." No, that's a good point. So now the little bonus section that you surprised me with there, Dennis, like jungles is a whole thing that I didn't even think of. And I guess there aren't a whole lot of jungle environments around here.
Well, you can if you really think about getting into these thick redwoods and stuff around here. That's almost like a jungle.
Yeah, it's true.
So the basic thing about jungles is, you can't easily, like before we had GPS. It's a little better now when we have GPS and stuff, but we have to navigate before when you just had a compass.
Yeah.
And you can't take a heading off of a mountain peak because you can't see anything. This is a problem like down in Louisiana, a place like that, when you do military training down there, and it's like everything looks the same, and there's no mountain peaks anywhere to get bearing off of, and you're going by time and distance. You're counting off paces and on a compass heading to try to get from point A to point B.
Okay. So it's just, you don't have the same context.
You don't have the same contents. It's almost like being in the fog.
Yeah.
You look around and it's like, it looks the same in all directions,
Yeah. So what's a good way of dealing with jungle environment? How does one prevent yourself from getting turned around and not knowing where you are?
Well, like I said, maybe have studied the map beforehand, have a map with you.
Yeah.
But know where you're going.
And then
where you started and pace it off. But otherwise, now we have GPS and stuff like that. But sometimes you're in a jungle canopy and the GPS isn't working.
Yeah.
Kind of like your satellite radio not working when you're driving up Highway 20 in a lot of places because of the tree canopy blocking the signal. You can't always get a satellite signal.
Oh, it's true. Okay.
So when you're in a jungle like that, you may not have your GPS may not be working.
Is there any other stuff that people should know around jungle environments? I mean, I guess insects is a thing.
Insects. I mean, there's a lot of critters out there, from insects to mammals that can hurt you.
Yeah.
Poisonous snakes that might be anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a thing actually about some snakes in South Africa.
Yeah.
Where they'll actually raise their heads up high and they'll be head height. And I've heard stories about people going through thick.
Well, in the jungle, they
grass.
might be up in the trees.
Right, exactly.
That's where they live.
Yeah.
You know, the viper up in the tree, you know.
Yeah. Things to watch out
The
for.
bamboo crates and stuff, you know.
So, is there anything you've spent some time, I guess you've spent a bit of time in jungles from your time
in
the military.
Yeah, so I went jungle survival school in the Philippines.
Okay.
Then I lived in Thailand for a year.
Yeah.
So that's...
Is there anything that you, like, good nuggets of information that they taught you about how to be okay in those environments?
Yeah, I mean, stay away from some of the critters, you know, like this, you know, the centipedes aren't like this or like this.
What, like 30 inches long?
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, I got bit by one in Hawaii one time between my fingers, and my hands swelled all up. So
the whole way up your arm?
Yeah.
Really? I didn't realize centipedes could do that. Are they like poisonous in some capacity?
Yeah, they're poisonous to some capacity. Just like, you know, scorpions, and some are more poisonous than others. And they're kind of like rattlesnakes, you know. The little scorpions are more poisonous than the big ones.
Ah, okay.
You know, and spiders, you know, in Australia, you got lots of poisonous spiders. And
Yeah. Not had the pleasure of meeting any of those yet.
I mean, even here, we got the brown recluse spiders you got to watch out for, along with the black widows. And,
Okay.
you know,
A brown recluse spider.
yeah, they're worse than black widows.
Are they?
Yeah.
Okay. Are they the same kind of deal? They look the same, or what do they look
No.
like?
They call them violin spiders because on the back there's like a marking that kind of looks like a violin.
Oh, like those two S's,
Yeah.
like a one back to front S.
Yeah.
Ah.
But I haven't seen any around here. They're mostly in little drier climates inland.
Yes.
But, you know, a lot of times people get into them because they're in their wood pile when they're grabbing wood. It's good to wear gloves.
It's good to wear gloves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely often think that as I'm not doing that. Because there's plenty of black widows around here.
A lot of black widows around here.
Yeah, there's some. I mean, on our stairwell right here, I've walked past them before. I'm like, oh, that's a black widow. Yeah. Probably should deal with that.
You know, the other thing, depending on what part of the world you're in, too. If back in the oceans, you know, you got to watch out for jellyfish and man-o'-wars and snails, or some deadly sea snails that can kill you. Pick up this, that's a pretty shell, and this thing stabs you with a venomous spine.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Or look what happened to Steve Irwin.
Yeah.
Just filming what he thought was an innocuous stingray.
Right. Just jump on it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure he's done it many times before.
Yeah.
But that was actually just a puncture to the heart, right?
Yeah.
With a barb.
Yeah. But it was probably because of the venom in the barb, too.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
So anyway, jungle's kind of the same thing. There's a lot of critters out there you got to watch out for.
And I guess it's a case of just do your homework before you go and just know what to watch out for.
Lions and tigers and bears. So no.
Okay, so I've got one area.
Depends on what part of the world, too. You might have to watch out for the indigenous people in those jungles.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's true. I guess there's always that's
know. What I was watching out for when I was over there. You know?
Well, there you go. Yeah, well, when you're in an actual war zone, then that's a whole other thing.
Plus, you know, it rains a lot.
Yeah.
During certain times of the year, you know.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing.
You got to be prepared for that.
What about, so you made me think of another.
And the heat and humidity. I mean, you can get heat stroke and heat exhaustion even when it's...
What's other issues as well? Like, this is not exactly an emergency, but being wet all the time.
Yeah,
having like wet feet and wet clothes.
Yeah, guys would get what they call trench foot, you know.
Yeah.
You want to change the socks or sandals or something that drains. You don't want to be walking around in wet shoes all the time.
So it's good to...
You know, we missed that on the mountain thing, you know. That's, you know, frostbite.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole thing that we didn't talk about.
We didn't talk about, but the same thing in the jungle.
Okay.
You get what they call immersion foot, which is the same as injury as frostbite. Basically, it's killing the tissue on your toes and stuff, you know.
And that's because your toes are exposed to moisture so much.
Well, if you ever stay in the bath too long or the pool too long, your fingers start to shrivel.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah.
You're in there. Well, do that for days.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, all that shriveled skin is peeling off.
Okay.
It's dead, you know.
So really, it's just about you've got to try and even so, this is the thing. I found occasionally just like if you're stopping somewhere for a while, if you're going to like glass when you're hunting, taking your boots off.
Yeah, take your boots off.
Letting some air get to your feet, or trying to change socks over.
Yeah, I carry extra socks and stuff, and I'll stop and take a break for an hour and let my feet air out and change my socks.
It's just a good maintenance thing.
Yeah. One of the biggest things that's happened in the jungle or the mountains or the desert is when I was at Mount Rainier, probably the biggest thing I used to have to rescue people for was blisters.
Really?
Yeah. So you're hiking out and you get blisters so bad you can't walk.
Wow.
Now you're like 10 miles from your car and you can't walk.
Just because your feet are so sore.
Your feet are so sore. I feel like they're burned on fire.
Wow.
You just have to carry people out because they got too many blisters. So, I mean, you want to have the right footwear. And people buy brand new boots to go on their hiking trip and had never walked in them before.
Right.
Or they just get plantar fasciitis from not having ill-fitting shoes or boots. You can't walk on that. You ever had plantar fasciitis?
What is that?
Well, it's your plantar fascia is the bottom of your sole of your
So like the arch of your foot?
Yeah, so it's like the arch, but it attaches back to the heel of your foot.
Oh, okay.
So what it feels like when you got it is it feels like you got a bone spur that you're walking on a nail.
On your heel?
Stuck in your heel.
Wow.
But
okay.
it's the end of the tendon that's flamed up. And
it's tender.
Yeah, it's tender. And every time you step on it, it's like, ow, oh.
Have you ever had that?
I've had it, yeah. And it's like, you read everything, and it's like, oh, there's, get some physical therapy, and you buy some special plantar fascia insoles for your shoes, and there's surgery that some doctors will do, but really what it says is usually no matter what's done, it'll go away in 18 months. Okay. Well, that's a year and a half.
That's a long time.
That's a long time. Well, for me, it went away in 18 months.
Really?
Yeah. But I did what the doctor said. He says, I'll go to the store, buy these insoles, and use it. And that's what it turned out, what caused it. I bought some new boots, and I thought the insoles were good, but they weren't compatible with my feet. Ah. And I got the plantar fasciitis from having poor arch support or poor insoles.
It's a good thing to know, though.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's going to be like, it's probably going to take 18 months no matter what.
No matter what.
Going down the avenue of surgery is probably a bit
you don't want
extreme.
To do, you don't want to do the surgery. The surgery's,
Yeah. In general, I've been told best to avoid surgery.
Don't do the surgery, no. They'll probably just make it worse,
Yeah, it's starting a whole other can of worms.
Like, probably what, the good surgeons are probably what they do, and they probably just like making a little cut and sewing it up and then saying, don't walk on this for 18 months.
And here's a bill for like $10,000.
Exactly. Then you see the guy around with the scooter. He's got his knee up on the scooter.
I see those. Yeah. It's a stylish accessory if ever I saw one.
What happened to you? I had plantar fasciitis surgery. Oh yeah, okay.
Nice. Okay, so a couple of little categories that I'd love to talk about because there is a lot of hunting talked about in this podcast.
Yeah.
I think talking about some of the common things that happen within the realms of hunting, we've covered a load of different areas, and obviously hunting happens in a lot of those, apart from maybe caves, but I could be corrected there.
You might be hunting bats,
You might. That's a good point. I wouldn't put it past some of my previous guests. So I guess, first of all, are there any stories that spring to mind of like accidents that have happened off on hunting trips or things where it's been you had to like come and lend a hand or help out where stuff's gone wrong while they're hunting? Does anything pop into your mind?
Well, yeah. Don't get yourself into situations you can't handle because like I went hunting with a buddy.
Yeah.
I don't hunt with him anymore because he has no sense of direction.
Ah.
Okay. And hope he doesn't listen to this podcast. No. I won't mention any names.
Okay, good.
But anyway, we were supposed to meet at this lake up in the top of the mountain, and I went up through the timber on one side, and he was supposed to go up to the timber on the other side.
Okay.
There was deer trails and elk trails coming down there, and we're looking for elk.
Yeah.
And he decided, oh, I think I'll climb up that rock face and go take a shortcut up there rather than go around.
Yeah.
Well, I went up where I was supposed to go, and then the elk ran down where he was supposed to be coming up because he wasn't coming, didn't do what he said he was going to do.
Right, they would have run right to him.
They ran past him, and neither one of us got him. Well, he climbed up and got stuck on the rock face. He got where he couldn't go up any further, and he couldn't go down.
Oh.
And he's climbing by himself with no ropes. So he's up on the side of a cliff.
Yeah.
And I'm looking all for him. I can't find him.
Yeah.
I didn't think he'd be dumb enough to go up that rock cliff, but so I didn't look there.
Yeah.
I went down where he was supposed to come up, and then I went back to camp, and I was about ready to call the sheriffs, and he comes running into camp about 10 o'clock at night and told me the story about how he got stuck up on the mountain. He finally figured out how to climb down after he was getting so cold that he was going to get hypothermic, and
yeah,
came down. But just, guys do that all the time where they crawl. I mean, I did kind of something stupid like that, although my abilities are, I was going across the hill, and I got to this point where there was this kind of a slide chute there. It was all scree.
Yeah.
And there was a deer trail or elk trail across it, but it was only about 6 inches wide.
Yeah, super narrow.
Super narrow, and it was like, if I slipped there, I was going to go like 300 foot down this scree slope, and probably got injured in the process. And I carefully walked across there, and I made it. But after I did it, I thought that was kind of dumb.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we've been there. Like, I've been there a number of times, and there's times I've got away with it. And
it's like I could have taken another 15 minutes and gone back and climbed up around and went around, but I took the shortcut. And
I think that's a good point. Maybe it's a mindset thing. You said there, it's like I've done exactly the same thing where it's after dark, last light hunting. You're really hoping that something's going to come along. Maybe it didn't come along that time. And you're like, right, I want to get out of here, so I'm going to go the quick way. And that quick way isn't necessarily a good way to go. And I think for me specifically, it was a small, like, canyon-y valley, but with very steep sides. And I didn't quite know how. I'd gone down there beforehand, but my head torch, I realized at this point I was quite new to hunting. I didn't have a super bright head torch, so it was hard for me to see far ahead to judge my route. Mm-hmm. And you're climbing and climbing, and it gets steeper and steeper, and it gets to the point where you're like hanging on to like roots from trees to just not slip down. And I think I learned a big lesson where it's like, just don't go beyond the point of no return.
Yeah.
And then ended up sliding on my chest all the way down this steep. And that's a kind of a visual I won't ever forget, actually, seeing Earth zooming in front of my face as I'm sliding with a head torch, as you're just falling down. And it wasn't super far to fall. It was probably, I didn't fall, but I slid very gracefully, I might add. No, it was one of those things where you're like, that could have been a lot worse than it was.
Yeah.
I lost skin off my toes because I wasn't even wearing shoes at that point because I was trying to be stealthy, and definitely, gave myself a few injuries. My bow was in pieces on the floor.
There was just a story yesterday in the news about some kid up in Washington did the same thing, trying to cross a trail like that where it was a slide area, and he slipped and fell and went 400 feet down to the river. They had to rescue him out of there because he was stuck down there.
Yeah, how are you going to...
But he lived,
Yeah. That's the thing, right? Like, it's optimism, I guess, that makes you think it's going to be okay.
Here's another story I can tell you about things to think about while you're out hunting.
Yeah.
So we weren't hunting, but when I was working on Mount Rainier, at the end of the season in September, the elk are bugling.
Yeah.
And the parks wanted to know how many elk were in the park because they're not native there. They were trying to manage the herd of elk in the park. But they would have guys from the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation who were good at bugling elk come up, and then we would take them out where we knew the elk were.
Right.
And got him. So I took this guy out. We hiked out. We were a couple, 3 miles back in the woods, and in the evening, and we started, he bugled a couple times, and elk started bugling back, and pretty soon we were overlooking this little pond in this meadow, and pretty soon we had 3 pairs of bull elk all fighting. there was two crashing in the water. Was a 7 by and an 8 by.
Wow.
Big, huge. And then there was like a 6 by 6 over here and a 2 5x over here. They were all fighting in the meadows. And so we sat there. It was like a National Geographic moment. Of course, we have no cameras or anything. National Geographic moment, and we're just sitting there amazed at what we're watching.
Yeah.
And we're there till dark. And, of course, we're up on this little peak looking down on this thing. It's like, well, it got dark. Well, it was a no-moon night.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we got to get back to the trail. We were probably a mile off the trail. And I had to get him back to the trail, and then we had to get back to the road where we were parked. And it turns out that, and he was older, like in his late 50s, 60s, and turned out he couldn't see at night.
Ugh.
And so I had and we had no headlamps because we didn't expect to be out there after dark.
Of course, yeah.
Because we got entrenched watching these animals.
Yeah, yeah.
And the reason I think they were fighting in the evening before dark is because there was no moon that night. On the full moon nights, they'll be out there, battling all night long.
Yeah.
But on those no moon nights, they're out during the day. So anyway, I managed to get us, with him holding my shoulders, walk us back and got us back safely. So this one of the things to know, and I learned this in the military. I wouldn't have been able to do this without the headlamps. Is your eyeballs, you have your rods and your cones.
Yes.
Okay, and one of them sees daylight and one of them sees night.
Yeah.
Is your night vision.
Okay.
Okay. I forget which is which. I think it's the rods are the night, or is it the cones? Anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, so the ones that are around the outside of your eye are your night vision. The ones in the center of your eye are your day vision.
It's also really good for peripheral vision and movement as well.
Yeah.
Right?
So.
Yeah.
Right. So, if you ever got caught out where you don't have a headlamp, or your headlamp went dead, and you need to walk and you need to see the trail, you don't look at it straight on. You look at it at a peripheral vision. You can see.
Ah, you can see enough.
You can see enough that you can make out shapes and make out the trail or whatever. Whereas if you look straight on, you can't see it.
It's dark.
You can see things over here, but you can't see right strictly in front of you.
So that's how you got out.
That's how you get out. I just, looked out through my peripheral vision and followed our way out that way.
That's such a great tip.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm going to end up using that at some point.
Yeah. That one and the pressure breathing are probably the two biggest tips that most people don't know that can get you out of trouble.
In a pinch.
Yeah.
Okay. In this kind of area of hunting stuff, we kind of covered a few things there, but like common injuries around like the hunting environment. So the stuff I've got written here, a few things, and we can cover whichever one you want to do. But like, I guess general, it's like trauma from weapons, like gunshot injuries, impaling injuries, and also even stuff as simple as like, it's so easy to cut yourself badly when you're processing animals and you're tired and it's 1 o'clock in the morning, right? Any of those sound good that you want to talk about?
Well, let's talk about just like fall injuries.
Okay.
Don't like cross logs. Logs get real slippery when they get a little moisture on them.
Oh, you mean like walk along a log?
Yeah, like you come to a place and it's like, well, I can crawl down this gulch like here and over the rocks and debris in there. I could walk across this log.
Yes.
We're all tempted to just walk across the log.
Yep.
Well, that can be very dangerous,
Yeah. Okay, so just be aware.
Just be aware of that. I mean, I've done that, but I've slipped many times. I was going through Air Force survival school, and we're crossing a log on a creek, and I ended up in the creek.
Yeah.
I'd have been better off if I just waded across the creek and got my legs wet and not try to go across the log and get my whole body wet.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I was out elk hunting, and I crossed the log across this dry creek gulch, and I was probably about 6 or 7 feet in the air crossing the log, and I slipped off and fell, and my gun went flying, and I went flying, and I ended up not hurting other than bruises, ended up not breaking anything except my gun.
Yes.
So
which is then your hunt's in trouble.
yeah,
right?
so it's like I go get the gun and the stock is cracked in half.
Oh man,
Because it landed.
That's got to be annoying.
It's annoying. The good thing about it, I had a good scope on it, and I went out and shot it afterwards, and it was still dead on.
Oh, brilliant!
Even though it took a hit.
So I guess based on what you were saying, like falling,
Yeah.
and like those kinds of injuries, I guess that ties in quite well with like tree stands. I don't know if you've ever hunted with tree stands much
Yeah,
yourself.
so the most common injuries for archers is falling on their arrows.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why they tell you always have a cover over your arrows.
Like a quiver of
Like a quiver. But a lot of times, you're walking along hoping to get a shot while you're walking, and you got that thing knocked, and you take a fall and you end up falling on your arrow.
Which is
Yeah.
potentially pretty serious.
That could be pretty serious. Those are pretty sharp. They're made for serious lacerations,
That's exactly what it's designed for.
Yeah. There was an actor back when I was a kid. His name was Clint Walker. I don't know if he just passed away recently, but he was played a lot of westerns.
Okay.
Had his own show and everything. His show called Cheyenne. But I remember a story about him. He was skiing and he fell, and the ski pole went through his heart. Luckily, it didn't kill him. It just did that. What I said before, we get the cardiac tamponade where it sliced his heart and it bled, and he had to go to the hospital and have that drained and patched up. But it could have killed you. I mean, that could kill you, falling on your arrow and have it go into a vital organ or something like that.
Yeah.
Or falling out of your tree stand. That's the other most common thing is,
right.
How many of us don't get enough sleep before we go hunting, and then we up in the tree stand and we doze off.
Massively.
That's why you always want to have a harness on, and have that harness on so that if you do fall out of the tree stand, it doesn't let you fall out of the tree stand. Because if you're hanging from the harness, that can kill you too.
How so?
Well, because you're hanging, you got a chest harness on usually.
Yeah.
You should have a full body harness.
Like around your pelvis as well.
Yeah, exactly. If you fall, you're sitting down.
Yes.
Some guys just wear, like when I did rock climbing, you had a chest harness, you had a sit harness.
Yeah.
But they weren't attached together.
Okay.
And you fall and you're hanging from your chest harness.
Right.
And it cuts off the circulation under your arms and you'll pass out.
Why does that happen?
Because you're cutting off the blood flow to your brain.
Oh, okay. So basically you're tourniqueting yourself with your own harness.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's like a tourniquet for your brain.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So you want to make sure you have a harness that fits and you're not going to fall off the platform when you're up there.
So it will like prop you. So if you pass out or if you fall asleep, you'll fall.
Or if you do fall off the platform, you're at a position where it's not hanging so far that you can still climb back up.
Yeah.
But best to have the full body harness where the top is connected to the bottom.
Okay.
Yeah. But, like a lot of us, it's like, we're going to go lightweight. I'm just going to do the bottom or I'm just going to do the top.
Yes.
It's
true.
Problem with just doing the bottom, when you fall asleep, now you're hanging out of the tree stand upside down.
And then that takes...
Then you can pass out too.
Okay. And it also would require a lot of like physical strength to be able to...
to get back up.
Right yourself back up and get back up.
Especially when you're old like me, you might be able to pull yourself up.
Okay, so we covered a lot already. What about injuries? I mean, I guess it's obviously just be careful. Practices when you're processing animals so that you don't...
Yeah.
Or like, what do you don't want to cut a finger off.
I always...
have a major cut.
Well, the other thing too is I always wear gloves.
Oh, do you?
Probably one of the biggest threats out while you're hunting or hiking anything else is Lyme disease or other disease you get from ticks.
Yes, insects.
Insects.
Or tick bites.
Tick bites. You want to have your repellents on.
Okay.
Always.
Yeah.
And you don't have to, you don't want to put DEET, which is the best repellent for ticks and...
Oh, DEET works on ticks as well?
Yeah. You don't want to put that directly on your skin,
Oh, the DEET?
The DEET.
Oh, I do. I guess the trouble is it's like the amount, how strong it is.
How strong it is. But, I mean, we used to, in the military, when we were in the jungle and whatnot, we used 100% DEET, It's like,
that's strong. It melts plastic, right?
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, what we do is wear socks that come up high.
Okay.
Roll your pants up.
Yeah.
And then spray the inside of your pants and your socks, and that way the critters don't come out.
It's like a barrier that
they
can't
and
cross.
You might think about this too. In the military, we always what you call blouser pants, where you got an elastic band that holds your pants tight so the bugs can't crawl up them.
Yes. Okay, I usually tuck do like a roll or two in my trousers and tuck that into my socks.
Yeah.
To create like a bit more.
You can do that too, but yeah, the military makes these little elastic bands that you can clip around and
just stops it.
So what we do is you can just do it around your boots, but what we do is you put your pants on, and then you drop your pants.
Yeah.
And then you roll up, you roll it up like this, and then
it's almost like rolled up
inside, and then you drop your pants, and then you put the band around the inside part, and you pull the pants back up. So then you walk around, your pants are like this at the top of your boots.
Oh, so it's kind of like
or then you can pull down over your boots, so it's kind of contained.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Did you ever have Lyme disease?
Yes.
Oh, you did.
I don't recommend it.
Top tip.
Well, the problem with Lyme disease is called the great imitator by the doctors.
Yeah.
Because it can imitate so many other diseases. So it can affect your heart and give you heart arrhythmias, so they think you have. Well, they diagnose your heart arrhythmia. They don't know it's being caused by Lyme disease. It can cause what they call atrial fibrillation.
Yeah.
Okay. And it can cause arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis.
Really?
Yeah. So your joints all ache. And so they diagnose you as having rheumatoid arthritis. Well, that's a symptom. That's not a disease.
Yeah.
It's like, what's causing your rheumatoid arthritis? Well, test you for Lyme disease. I tell people, if doctors ever tell them you got atrial fibrillation or rheumatoid arthritis, you better get tested for Lyme disease. It can cause neurological symptoms. That's what I had. So one of the things you learn when you're going through medical training is, doctors don't really know that much. What they know is how to look up stuff.
Okay.
So when you go in the emergency room, the nurse comes in there and says, "Tell me what's wrong with you," and she writes all this down. She takes it back into the doctor. He reads that. He gets on the computer now, but before it was the Merck manual.
Yeah.
You could look up the symptoms, and the symptoms would tell you what the possible diseases are.
Yeah.
So then the doctor come in and act like he's real smart. He says, "Well, you could have this." Says, "We're going to test you for these things, and then we'll get back with you." Okay. And so I learned I could do that myself.
You could look it
up. So every time I've had something seriously wrong with me, I already done it, and I go to the doctor to tell him what's wrong with me. In fact, I had a kid. One of the things that doctors have done now is everybody's relying on. You talk about relying on GPS and stuff too much.
Yeah.
Everybody's relying on medical tests. Used to be the old-time doctors relied on sight and smell.
Yeah.
And feel.
Yeah.
Okay, they could diagnose most stuff that now, we got to do an ultrasound. So I had a kid I took to a Ducks Unlimited. They wanted to go. A couple kids wanted to go snowboarding, skiing. So they wanted to go to a Ducks Unlimited dinner, and wanted to go. So I said, "I'll tell you what. I'll take you to Reno. We'll go to the Ducks Unlimited dinner in Reno. You guys go skiing.
Yeah. And
then that night we'll go to the Ducks Unlimited dinner. We'll stay over, and then we'll come home." Well, while he was skiing, he got abdominal pain to the point he couldn't ski anymore. And then we got back to the hotel. He didn't feel like eating and didn't feel like going to the Ducks Unlimited dinner. We went, me and the other kid, I took him to the Ducks Unlimited dinner, and then we got back to the hotel, and he was feeling even worse, abdominal pain. So I said, "Here, let me check you out." Well, there's a definitive test for appendicitis.
I was wondering that.
And you go in the hospital and they go, "Well, we got to do an ultrasound to see look at your appendix." Well, you don't really need to. You can go in there. And so the definitive test is you have them lay flat down and you push on their lower right abdomen.
Yeah.
As hard as you can. Push it in like
really hard.
2 or 3 inches. And you'll ask them, "Does that hurt? Does that hurt?" "No, no, no." And then you let off real quick and they'll scream. "Ah!" It's called rebound tenderness.
Wow.
And,
Okay.
and if they have that, then you have peritonitis. But the most common cause of peritonitis, the only way you get peritonitis is having an internal infection. So the most common cause of peritonitis is appendicitis.
So you did that test.
I did that test. I said, and I'd done this 100 times out in the field in the military with young GIs who'd get appendicitis. That was one of the biggest rescue things we do with the military. Is
Really?
You get some guy out, Army guy out doing maneuvers and whatnot, and he's got abdominal pain. We'd fly in there and pull him out of the helicopter, and you got appendicitis. Take him to the hospital, get a surgery.
Yeah.
I did lots of those, and so I knew you got appendicitis. So luckily, with the hotel we're staying in, the hospital was right across the street. So I took him over to the hospital, and of course it's like a weekend, and it's there's no doctors on duty, and it's like tell the nurse practitioner in there, it's like he's got appendicitis. Well, I don't really, I don't know if that's the case. We'll do some tests and we'll get an ultrasound. And they bring in the portable ultrasound and say, well, we don't see anything, and they said, we'll send him down to the bigger ultrasound machine. It says, well, he's got some gas bubbles in there. We can't really see his appendix. And I said, trust me, he's got and they just kind of poo-pooed me when I kept telling him he's got appendicitis. And, well, the doctor will be in here at 8 in the morning. We'll keep him comfortable overnight. We'll give him some painkillers, and the doctor will be here at 8 in the morning. So the doctor comes in the morning. I came back, and the doctor comes in the morning, and the doctor goes, this kid's got appendicitis and he needs to go to surgery. They told us nurses, see?
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of those things, right? And all the while, yes, come stay here, and we'll give you a nice bill in the morning.
We'll give you a nice bill in the morning. We'll get a overnight hospital stay out of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you got to wonder. All right, I'm just going to have a quick check of my list. The other thing I was going to say...
The main thing is don't shoot your hunting partner and don't let them shoot you.
That's always good, gun safety.
I mean, always, it's a good thing that you said what they're carrying your medical kit now.
Yeah.
One is, I'd carry, you know what moleskin is?
Yes. It's like the stuff for blisters, eh?
Yeah. So if you get a blister, you put the moleskin on.
Yeah.
And then moleskin can rub in your boot and your sock, and you can walk out.
Yes.
So those are the kind of things. Always have that moleskin with you in case you get a blister.
Yeah.
Or somebody in your party.
Or your buddy gets it.
Usually somebody with you who didn't pay attention, didn't bring his own moleskin. And the other thing would be that new stuff, the quick clot.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that stuff, it's like a new technology, right?
Yeah, so the military uses a lot. It's like, instead of pressure on the bleeder, you pour this powder in there and it stops the bleeding.
Yes.
It's called quick clot. So
okay, and it just goes in there and
it
expands.
Yeah,
right? Like it's some plate things that they just really expand suddenly and will fill a.
It just fills it in and stops the bleeding that way.
Yes, I've heard about that.
Yeah, so it's good to have that
for gunshot wounds.
For gunshot wounds and stuff like that.
Shoot that stuff in there and it will prevent hemorrhaging.
Yeah, you just pour it on there so it's not coming out.
Okay.
Might not prevent the hemorrhage inside, but mainly it's for like if you got a big deep cut or something like that, you can pour it in there and it's.
Okay, that's a good thing to know.
The other thing to get too, and some of you can't just find this stuff at the pharmacy.
Yes.
You got to order it online. But
Yeah.
you can order it. The other thing to do is, like, I've had both my hips replaced from all the mountain climbing and parachuting stuff I'd done.
Yeah.
Wore them out. Well, when they did the surgery on there, they didn't put any sutures in it.
So what's a suture again? Just so that I know.
Stitching,
Okay, they didn't stitch it up.
They didn't stitch it up. I mean, it used to be they stitch and then everybody was doing the metal staples.
Yeah.
They didn't do either of that. What they do now is super glue.
Oh, okay.
So you can get the medical super glue, the tissue glue.
Yeah.
And, so you could like suture yourself up by putting the glue on there and
just sealing it up.
Closing your wound.
Wasn't that what super glue was even invented for?
That's what super glue was supposedly originally invented for, and you could probably use it for that, but better to get the medical grade stuff.
Medical grade.
Make sure there's no, contaminants in that stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, that's a good thing. That's not on my list.
Yeah, the other thing good to have is some ophthalmic Neosporin.
Okay, what's that?
You know, Neosporin. It's good to have Neosporin or something, antibiotic ointment.
Okay.
So if you get some puncture, scrape or something, you could put some antibiotic on it.
Yeah.
But also if you scratch your eye or get an eye infection and stuff while you're out, they make a ophthalmic.
That's what that means. It's for the eye.
Ophthalmics for your eye.
Okay.
So it's an ophthalmic grade.
Like an eye drop type thing, or
Well, it's like a Vaseline type thing. A squeeze out of a tube.
and then you can just rub that.
You
in
just
your eye.
you just put it in your eyelid like that. And you put it in there.
I think I might have actually used that before.
Yeah. Now, the doctor gave us our medical training when I was in the military.
Yeah.
He said you can use any of the Neosporins because they really don't make two different ophthalmic and a regular one. They just put this in a littler tube and call it ophthalmic and charge you more for it. But it's the same stuff as the other Neosporin.
Okay, good.
So,
I always love a little trick like that.
yeah,
Right?
so
Okay,
moleskin and the quick clot and some bandages.
perfect.
Not just your Band-Aids from...
So the last thing I have here as a little list, I mean, I think we've like hit most stuff. The only thing I would say is you said to me a while ago, it's good to know a few knots.
Yeah.
Like knots can get you out of trouble pretty quickly. And I mean, we're doing a entirely audio based thing right now, so this is a difficult subject to talk about. But if there were like, I guess like 2 or 3 good knots to know, what would be ones? I mean, is that something you comfortable kind of discussing?
Yeah. So you want to be able to tie a loop in the end of a line.
Okay.
So you should know how to tie what you call a bowline on the end of a line.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
That's a good one. Tick. I do know how to do that. Good.
Okay.
I'm worried because I was thinking I don't know many knots.
You know, a lot of the knots. I mean, there's all kinds of knots you can tie, but some of them aren't going to hold.
Yeah.
And some of them, after you tie them, if you tie them wrong, you're not going to be able to get them apart.
They're super tight afterwards.
Yeah. So like a figure 8 knot is another way of tying a loop in the end of a line or tying 2 lines together. That's a good knot to know.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know that one. Okay.
Yeah.
Figure of 8 knot.
Yeah.
Is that also known as a sheep bend?
Sheep's
maybe?
bend is a little
Sheep bend?
different. So sheep bend is for tying 2 dissimilar ropes together.
Okay.
So you got a loop, and then you come up on the sheep bend up through and around, and then up again, and then instead of going straight out, you go through the other one. And
Okay.
that's
The figure 8 knot. Okay, no, I know the figure 8 knot. It's
called
a reef knot, right?
yeah,
As well.
instead of just an overhand knot.
It's like an over and under, pop.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I
Now,
do know that knot.
One that we always learned how to do is like, okay, you fell down the cliff, and you broke an arm, and your buddy up there, if they got a rope, he throws you the rope, and then you got to tie it around your waist so he can pull you up.
What knot are you going to tie?
What are you going to tie with one hand?
I would probably try and tie a bowline.
Yeah. So there's a way of tying a bowline with one hand.
Okay.
So
I'm trying to visualize how
I
to
can
do
show you how
this.
to do that, son. Well, you got the guy, he's holding the rope up here. You take the rope and you bring it around you like this, and you got a hold of it.
Yeah.
So the rope's going up. You put your wrist over like this,
All right. Okay.
and you kind of just made your hole.
Yes.
And then you flip it around like this, and then you pull it back
And then
down
it's done.
to the hole, and it's around you, and you've done that with one arm.
Let's make a video. I'm going to put this on my Instagram so people can see that. Let's do a visual of that because that would have meant nothing to anyone listening to this. But if you check now, we'll make a little video and we'll put that so that when you hear this podcast, it'll be on my Instagram. Okay, that's great. That's such a good. I had no idea that you could tie a bowline. I always do the old make a burrow, rabbit.
Rabbit
runs around the tree, goes back down the hole.
You can do that with one hand.
Okay, perfect. So that's you've done 3 knots right there.
That's 3, and then what they call a Prusik knot.
Okay.
Okay, or a half hitch.
Yes.
Okay. So a Prusik knot is you wrap like 3 or 4 twist lines, and then it kind of goes through itself.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I know that.
So you could tie 2 Prusik knots like a fisherman's knot. You could tie 2 lines together and cinch them up into one knot.
Okay, yeah.
But you can also make a climber out of it, or you have a length of rope. You could do a Prusik knot on there so that you can slide it up the rope, and then when you pull on it, it tightens down.
Ah.
So
That's something. That sounds next level.
So say something like you're down a cliff and you got to go straight up the rope. Okay, you don't have any ascenders.
Yeah.
You can
That's how
do
you
it with the
climb.
Prusik knife. There's some James Bond movies where he does it with his shoelaces.
Okay, I'm going to have to look that one up. I think that's my homework, amongst some other things.
Yeah.
But I think unless there's anything else.
Clove hitch is always a good one for that's where you tying a rope to something.
Yes, clove hitch, I do know. I know the name. I did have a bit of a nautical upbringing.
Yeah.
So wait, tell me what the clove hitch is. I mean, people can look it up as well, obviously.
Yeah.
Again, bearing in mind this is an audio thing, so this might be a little abstract for people. Okay, clove hitch, you do...
Well, let's say you have a bar.
Yeah. Yes, okay.
It could be this way too, but
Yeah,
say you have a bar, you put the rope over there.
Yeah.
Bring it around.
Yeah.
Cross it.
Yes.
Bring it around again and then up through
and then tuck through itself.
To itself.
And then it's good and strong.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
It'll hold and you can undo it real easy.
Yes.
And then you can, like if you're tying up your boat or something to something, you can, that last one that you go through, you can bring it through on a loop.
And then
so that you just pull it out like a shoelace. You just tuck it back through and then.
Okay.
So it could just come out with like a quick pull.
Nice. I feel like we could do a whole episode about knots.
We can do a whole episode on knots if you want to do that.
Might have to be a visual one at some point.
Oh, I got one I'll have to show you. You have to do visually.
Yeah, well maybe we'll do. I'll record a couple of things after this, and we can. I'll keep it because I'm never going to remember otherwise. Okay, so unless there is anything else in your mind about stuff that we should talk about, I feel like now is probably a good time to do the wrap-up section.
Okay.
Thank you, Dennis, for sharing all of your stories and your knowledge. I mean, like, my brain is packed full of all this stuff. I'm sure at some point, if the shit hits the fan, I'm going to be like, oh, this thing Dennis said to me. I'm probably going to be like trying to desperately find the podcast.
Yeah, right.
As I'm like bleeding out.
So which podcast was that on? Yeah.
But yeah, that's super helpful. And I'm sure it's going to be handy to someone, I'm sure, who's out in the wilderness. And also it sounds like it really is about mindset and doing the right preparation as well.
Yeah,
so
just be prepared.
Yeah, have the right knowledge.
Back to the old Boy Scout motto is be prepared.
Exactly. So, is there? I mean, I don't know if you're on social media and things like that. If you're interested in anyone kind of wants to follow along on your adventures fishing stuff or anything, if you want to send them your way, or if you just want to keep that to yourself, then that's also fine.
They can find me on social media, but I don't post too much stuff. Once in a while, on Facebook or Instagram, I'll post some hunting pictures or whatnot. But
okay, all right. I'll put a link.
Or
down.
Fishing pictures, probably more than anything.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed a lot of fishing pictures in your Instagram. So I'll put a thing down in the show notes if people want to follow you there. But otherwise, thanks for your time.
Okay.
And
anytime.
Thanks for giving people some useful information that's hopefully going to at least solve them from being in a little sort of bad situation, but potentially save some lives out there. So,
all right.
Amazing. Thanks, chap.
All right.
Right, that wraps up another episode. I want to say a big thank you again to Dennis. Thank you for sharing all your wisdom and stories and for your service. And thank you everyone for listening. If you are enjoying this podcast, then please feel free to do all the things that people who like podcasts do. Give the show a follow. Switch on automatic downloads. That helps me get more accurate numbers. You could leave a nice review. That's always appreciated and also helps with the algorithmy thingies. Wow, that's a mouthful. Helps with the algorithms and means that when someone's searching outdoorsy podcasts like this one, then ours will pop up before everyone else. Everyone else. Another thing that's also super helpful is if you do like this podcast, then share it with a like-minded friend. If there's someone out there you know who loves getting outdoors or loves getting into mischief out there, or you think should do more, then send it away. As I said before, there are links to all the relevant things in the show notes. You can follow Dennis. You can check out those videos of the knots. Yeah, I think that's everything for now. Thanks for listening, and until next time.